Hi, I'm Betty Gilmore. I am the maternal grandmother of Chanel Elizabeth Elaine Griffith.
Okay, you were born.
I was born, how old I am, you want me to put that in?
You were born.
I was born July the 19th and the year 1928 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay.
I resided there for approximately 2 years after my father died,
Who was?
who was Cornelius Wilford, and my mother was Rosalie Gamble Wilford.
All right. And what happened after that?
After my father died, my mother did not have anyone to take care of myself and my younger sister, who was Loretta Wilford. So she decided to take us to South Carolina to reside with my grandmother and my uncle and his wife. And she left us there and returned to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where she worked at Camel's Cigarettes. I wouldn't call it Camel's Cigarettes, I'd call it where they manufactured or made Camel's cigarettes. And she lived there because economically it was more profitable for her to stay there and leave us with my uncle, my grandmother, and my aunt. She came back for a short while to bring my sister. I did not have a sister when my mother left, however. I had a younger sister when she returned to South Carolina. She decided to stay there for a while, and she found a job in Manning, South Carolina, earning $2.50 a week. She kept the 50 cents and sent the $2 home for us to live off, my sister and myself to live off of. We were able to survive because my uncle managed the farm and supported us that way.
Now tell me a story from your childhood that helped to identify you.
As a child, let's see, I attended the Manning School, which doubled as our church on Sundays. We were very, very poor, and I had to walk to school. And in walking to the school, which was adjacent to our little school, there was a store. I'll tell you about the bottle. I walked to school, and there was a little grocery store nearby, and that was the store my grandmother always sent me to get groceries for midweek for our family. And since money was so scarce, I never got money for candy or gum or anything like that. If she wanted a can of salmon that cost 10 cents, she just gave me 10 cents. The gentleman, the owner of the store, lived in the back, and he had this door in the front that slammed, which would signal to him that there was somebody in the front of the store. However, I figured out that if I took one of his soda bottles, which were in the front, and did not slam the door, he would not know I was there. Therefore, what I did was, I took one of his soda bottles one day, went out and came back and slammed the door, and gave him his own soda bottle with trembling hands. And I was able to get 2 Mary Janes for that 2 cents, his own 2 cents. Now I have to eat all of this candy before I got home, because they would want to know where I got it, how I got it, and everything, and I would have been threatened to go to jail for that. Of course it wasn't true, but they would have threatened me that they were going to call the sheriff to send me to jail. Right? Okay. After that, I became 7 years old, and my mother decided to send for me and my sister. And at 7 years old, I went to New York. I thought it was about 2 miles away, But 2 days later, I found I was still riding. We still had not gotten to New York. It took us 3 days during those days to go to New York. And when I got there, I saw buildings that were on top of buildings. It seemed to me they were so tall. And the thing that fascinated me was the clotheslines, how they got the clotheslines from one apartment to one in the front to the back and vice versa. However, they had their methods of doing that, which I learned later. And my mother decided to put us in school there. It was the first time that I had sat by a white girl, and she and I became friends. And I attended PS 84, which was Public School 84, and I saw white and black people working together, learning together, playing together, etc. I went to school in 84, at 84, PS 84, and let me see, I got to get the church in there because that's the time I started really going to the church. There was a little storefront church on the corner, and I always had a love for music. Therefore, whenever they would gather and the piano was being played and the drums and tambourines, we would sneak in the back of the church and sit there and listen to the music, just for the music's sake. However, we started going on a regular basis, my friends and I, and then we learned what the preacher was saying was from the Bible, and we had heard about the Bible before, and that helped us to realize who God was and why we needed Him in our lives to direct us, tell us, and hear our prayers and protect us. So we accepted the Lord. Well, see, I met the Lord really in the Baptist church with Reverend Brown and them. I knew about the Lord before I came to New York because, as I said, I was in school. The schoolhouse doubled as the church on Sunday. So I met the Lord really in South Carolina, but not in a real way to know what being saved, and giving your life to God really meant. We went to church. That's the part I knew about the Lord, and we worshiped Him. But I met the Lord when I was about 16 in First Church.
Okay. And that's in Brooklyn, New York?
No. Let me see. Oh, yes, Reverend Brown's church was Brooklyn. Yes.
Okay.
In Brooklyn.
And then
I went to the Pentecostal church as a result of my aunt hearing the broadcast on Sunday night. And she said, let's go to that church that broadcast. And so we went there. That's where I really formed a relationship with the Lord. And after I formed that relationship with the Lord, then I became more involved in the choir and other auxiliaries in the church. And that is where I was permitted to do the dramas and exercise my spiritual gifts more. I sang in the choir. I was the president of the Young Women's Christian Council, doing things like that. And I was the founder of the Ministry to Social Necessities, which was like a social entity to one of the churches, to people who had social needs that were not met through the church. And I wrote dramas, therefore I was able to write and produce dramas. One play, Amazing Grace, that lasted. The drama that I produced was Amazing Grace, that ran for 12 years in the New York area, surrounding areas like Connecticut and southward to Pennsylvania, Delaware. And we went to the churches and the schools and the prisons.
what other plays have you written?
The first play that I wrote was a comedy, and it was really more of a satire of the people in churches in general. You have a person who feel that they are the best singer in the church. However, they are not the best, and people know that, but they just try to accommodate them. They have people who try to rule the church over the pastor, try to change what the pastor has said, and they're not capable of doing that either. And they want to form every motion that's made in the church, and they just want to be in charge, but they're not capable of doing that. And and you have people whose family has been in the church for years, such as ours. Our family have ministers and deacons and elders and bishops and administrators in the church, musicians. One of my son, William Craig Gilmore, is a musician who plays the drum, piano, and the organ. My daughter was in the medical field for years, and she's a medical assistant. She was on the nurses board in the church.
Her name?
Her name is Venus Ilona Gilmore, and she's married to Gregory, and she has the one living daughter now, Chanel. She had Kathleen, but Kathleen only came to visit us a short period of time and went back to heaven.
And then you have William Craig has 2 children.
Yes. You want me to just to touch on that?
Talked on Chanel, so
I talked on Venus, and I just talked on William. I said that he's a musician.
Right, but he has 2 children.
Oh yeah, okay.
And he has 2 grandchildren.
Yes, he has 2 children. He has Lakeisha Atherson, and she has also 2 sons who would be my great-grandsons. The first one's name is Michael, Christian Michael. Her last name is Atherson. And she has Gabriel, and they're about 4 and 5 now, I think. 4 and 5 years old. And they are in preschool in California.
Excellent, excellent. Now, you also are a puppeteer. You've done
yes.
puppets.
I made hats. I made flowers. We never was one just to sit home and wish for things. We would make them happen in our family. So I was able to do that. Hats. I did hat shows. I also made flowers, which I sold for Mother's Day. And Mother's Day was really the time for keeping men and women and children in remembrance of their families by wearing these flowers. The colors meant, the red meant that you had a mother that was alive. Pink, you had a stepmother. It was geared toward remembering your mother. Your mother was the person that you remembered on Mother's Day, and your flowers indicated that if you wore a white flower, however, that meant you had a mother, however, she went back to heaven. And we sold these, made every flower, every petal, and they were representative of the status of your mother, whether she was in the world or if she had gone back to heaven.
Okay. Now tell me, what do you want people to remember you for?
I want to be remembered as a person who gave herself to other people to help them out of situations that they were involved in that were critical. I helped with funerals, I helped with babies, I taught in daycare. So that way I knew about children, preschool children as well as school children. I have taught people skills so that they could get off of welfare. I taught them how to type, how to answer phones. These were job entry levels, skills that they gave them the skill to enter a job in an office. and be able to take care of an office.
Good, good. Is there any other item about your life, any other thing that you wanted to say in this venue about your life and how it has impacted other people?
Yes, I feel that we all were born with skills from God, but people sometimes do not know what their skill or gift is from God, but we all were born with something that we do well at. And if you can find that skill, that gift within yourself that God has placed within you, you will always be able to support yourself in this world. You will be able to help others and yourself to advance to the place where God has for you in this world. You don't have to be a bum wishing and hoping. You can use what God gave you here, gave you to deal with here. I wanted to tie this all together by saying I am 86 years old now. And as I look back in retrospect, I can see the hand of God and how He was directing my path and Gregory's family to be together. When I first met the Griffiths, my daughter met Gregory Griffith, I learned that Christ was the best thing that had ever happened to me in my life. Because when I first introduced my daughter to Gregory, the Lord spoke a word to me, and that word was love. Now I can see how expansive that word was. It was really, really beautiful that they became husband and wife and gave me two beautiful granddaughters, one who is in heaven, Kathleen, and Chanel, who just got engaged. I thank God for this pleasure and this privilege, but in all of my getting, He was the best thing that ever happened to me. And if you stay with Him and allow Him to stay with you, life will be so much easier, because it's not always easy, but with God, all things are possible. Don't forget that.